The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the dusty Nevada settlement of Lovelock, and Theresa Grant stepped down into the afternoon heat with nothing but a carpetbag, a worn cotton dress, and a shame so heavy it bent her shoulders forward like she carried the weight of the entire Sierra Nevada on her back. She stood there on the rutted Main Street in May of 1878, watching the stagecoach driver toss her single bag to the ground without meeting her eyes, and she knew that look, had seen it 100 times in the last 6 months. The driver climbed back up to his bench, snapped the reins, and left her standing in a cloud of dust that settled on her dark hair like a veil of condemnation. Theresa was 22 years old, unmarried, and 6 months pregnant. In the small Missouri town where she had lived her entire life, that combination had transformed her from a respectable schoolteacher into something people whispered about in church pews and parlors. The father of her child had been a traveling salesman who had promised her marriage and given her nothing but lies and a baby she would raise alone. When her condition became impossible to hide, the school board had dismissed her, her landlady had evicted her, and even her own parents had turned their backs, unable to face the scandal she represented. So she had taken what little money she had saved and bought a ticket west, to Nevada, to anywhere that was not the place where everyone knew her story. The ticket agent had suggested Lovelock, a growing town along the Central Pacific Railroad, where opportunities existed for those willing to work. He had not asked questions, and she had been grateful. Now, standing in the middle of the strange town with the May sun beating down on her bonnet, Theresa felt the full weight of her situation. She had no plan beyond arriving, no job prospects, no place to stay, no references that would not reveal her shameful condition. She pressed a hand to her swelling belly and fought back tears. She had promised herself she would not cry anymore. The town stretched before her in both directions, a collection of wooden buildings that lined the main thoroughfare. She could see a general store, a saloon, a boarding house, a livery stable, and various other establishments that marked a frontier settlement in the process of becoming something more substantial. The Humboldt River ran nearby, she knew, providing water for the ranches and farms that dotted the landscape. Beyond the town, the desert stretched in all directions, broken only by distant mountains that shimmered in the heat. Theresa picked up her carpetbag and walked toward the boarding house, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. She had enough money for perhaps a week of room and board, maybe 2 if she was careful. After that, she would need to find work, though she could not imagine what kind of employment a pregnant woman with no husband could secure in a place like this. The boarding house was run by a Mrs. Fletcher, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes that took in Theresa's condition immediately. "I have a room available," she said, her voice neutral but not unkind. $2 a week, meals included, payment in advance. Theresa counted out the coins from her purse, watching her small savings dwindle. Mrs. Fletcher took the money and handed her a key. "Room 3, top of the stairs. Breakfast at 6, supper at 7. No men in the rooms, no drinking, no loud behavior." "Thank you," Theresa said quietly. "Are you alone?" Mrs. Fletcher asked, and there was something in her tone that might have been concern. "Yes, madam." The older woman nodded slowly. "Lovelock is a decent town, mostly. Keep to yourself, do not cause trouble, and you will be left alone. That is about the best advice I can offer." Theresa climbed the narrow stairs to her room, which was small but clean, with a single bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the main street. She set down her carpetbag and sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself a moment of stillness after days of travel. Through the thin walls, she could hear the sounds of the boarding house, footsteps and muffled voices, and from outside came the constant noise of the town, horses and wagons, people calling to one another, the distant whistle of a train. She had arrived. Now she had to figure out how to survive. The next morning, after a breakfast of porridge and coffee that she ate alone at a corner table, while the other boarders studiously ignored her, Theresa set out to look for work. She visited the general store first, where the owner took one look at her condition and told her he had no positions available. The dressmaker said the same. The restaurant. The hotel. By midday, she had been turned away from every respectable establishment in town. She was standing outside the post office, trying to gather her courage to continue, when a man's voice spoke behind her. "You look lost." Theresa turned and found herself looking at a tall man in his late 20s with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the desert sky at dawn. He wore dusty work clothes, a battered hat, and boots that had seen hard use. His face was lean and honest, with the kind of features that would never be called handsome, but had a fundamental decency to them that showed in the way he looked at her, meeting her eyes directly without judgment or speculation. "I am looking for work," she said, lifting her chin despite the shame that wanted to bow her head. "Are you new to Lovelock?" "I arrived yesterday." He nodded, studying her for a moment. She waited for his gaze to drop to her belly, for his expression to change, but it did not. "I am Carter Zimmerman. I run a ranch about 5 miles north of town. Not much of a spread yet, but I am building it up. I could use someone to help with the house, the cooking, the garden. The work is not easy, but it is honest." Theresa stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You want to hire me, if you are willing to work. I will not lie to you, Miss Grant. Theresa Grant. Miss Grant. The ranch house is small and rough. I have been batching it for 2 years now, and the place shows it. I can offer room and board and $15 a month. It is not much, but it is what I can afford right now." "Why would you hire me?" The question came out before she could stop it. "You can see that I am." She gestured helplessly at her condition. Carter Zimmerman's expression did not change. "I can see that you are looking for work and I need help. Seems like a fair exchange to me. Your personal situation is your own business, Miss Grant. I am not hiring you to pass judgment. I am hiring you to cook meals and keep house. Can you do that?" Theresa felt something crack open in her chest. Some hard shell she had built around herself during the long months of rejection and shame. This stranger was offering her exactly what she needed most: work, shelter, and the simple dignity of being treated like a human being rather than a scandal. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion she struggled to control. "Yes, I can do that. Good. I have business in town that will take me a few more hours. Can you be ready to leave by 4 o'clock? I will pick you up at the boarding house." "I will be ready." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture of respect that nearly undid her completely, then walked away down the street, leaving Theresa standing in the sunshine with tears running down her cheeks and hope blooming in her heart for the first time in months. At exactly 4 o'clock, Carter drove up to the boarding house in a wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses. Theresa was waiting with her carpet bag, having settled her account with Mrs. Fletcher, who had looked surprised but pleased to see her leaving with employment secured so quickly. "That is Carter Zimmerman," Mrs. Fletcher had said when Theresa told her where she was going. "He is a good man, honest and hardworking. Lost his parents to fever 3 years ago and has been running that ranch on his own since. He will treat you fairly." Now, as Carter helped her up onto the wagon seat, Theresa felt the curious eyes of the town on them, but she kept her gaze forward, her spine straight. Let them look. Let them whisper. She had work and a place to go, and that was more than she had dared hope for. The ride north took them out of town and into open country, where the desert gave way to grassland fed by irrigation ditches that drew water from the Humboldt River. Other ranches dotted the landscape, their boundaries marked by wooden fences and occasional windmills. The May afternoon was warm but not yet scorching, and a breeze carried the scent of sagebrush and wild grass. "The ranch is about 200 acres, Carter said as they drove, his voice easy and conversational. "Mostly cattle, some horses. I have about 50 head right now, hoping to build that up to 100 by next year. The house is nothing fancy, just 4 rooms and a porch, but it is solid. I built it with my father before he died." "It sounds fine," Theresa said. "I want to be clear about expectations," he continued. "I work from sunup to sundown most days, sometimes longer during calving season or when we are moving cattle. I will need breakfast before dawn, dinner packed to take with me, and supper when I come in. The house needs cleaning, there is a garden that needs tending, chickens to care for, laundry to do. It is a lot of work. I am not afraid of work, Mr. Zimmerman. Call me Carter. We are going to be living under the same roof, no point in being formal about it." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "There is a spare room off the kitchen. It is small, but it has a good bed and a window. That will be your space, your privacy. I will not intrude on that." Theresa understood what he was telling her. He was establishing boundaries, making it clear that this was a working arrangement, nothing more. She should have felt relieved, and she did, but there was also something else, a small flicker of disappointment that she immediately squashed. She was in no position to think about anything beyond securing her immediate survival. The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. The house was exactly as Carter had described it, a simple wood frame structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. Behind it stood a barn, a chicken coop, a smokehouse, and various corrals and outbuildings. It was modest and unpretentious, but Theresa could see the care that had gone into its construction, the straight lines and solid joinery that spoke of honest craftsmanship. Carter helped her down from the wagon and carried her carpetbag into the house. The interior was dim after the bright sunlight, but clean despite his claims of neglect. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a cast iron stove, a table and chairs, and a worn sofa near a stone fireplace. 2 doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms, and a third door stood open to reveal the small room that would be hers. "Make yourself at home," Carter said, setting her bag on the narrow bed. "I need to see to the horses and check on the cattle before dark. There is bread and cheese in the pantry if you are hungry, and the well is just outside the back door. Tomorrow I will show you where everything is and we can work out a routine." "Thank you," Theresa said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. "Thank you for this chance." Carter looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something flicker in his eyes, some emotion she could not quite name. "Everyone deserves a chance, Miss Grant. I believe that. Now get settled. I will be back before dark." He left her alone in the small room, and Theresa sat on the bed, running her hands over the faded quilt that covered it. Through the window, she could see the empty land stretching away to the mountains, and for the first time since she had discovered she was pregnant, she felt something other than fear and shame. She felt possibility. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that Theresa found both exhausting and deeply satisfying. She rose before dawn to make breakfast, thick pancakes and bacon and strong coffee that Carter consumed in silence before heading out to work. She spent her days cleaning the house, tending the vegetable garden that had been neglected but still produced beans and squash and tomatoes, collecting eggs from the chickens, doing laundry in a big tub outside, and preparing the evening meal. The work was hard, harder than teaching had ever been, and by the end of each day her back ached and her swollen ankles throbbed. But it was honest work, and no one looked at her with judgment or pity. Carter treated her with unfailing courtesy, thanking her for meals, asking if she needed anything from town, never intruding on her privacy or asking questions about her past. At night, after supper was cleared away and Carter had retreated to his own room, Theresa would sit in the rocking chair on the porch and watch the stars come out over the desert. The baby moved inside her now, strong kicks and rolls that reminded her constantly of the new life she carried. She would press her hands to her belly and talk softly to the child, making promises about the future she was trying to build for both of them. One evening in early June, about 3 weeks after she had arrived at the ranch, Carter joined her on the porch after supper. He carried 2 cups of coffee and handed her one before settling into the other chair. "Getting hot," he observed, looking out at the twilight landscape. "Yes," Theresa agreed, "but the evenings are pleasant." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their coffee. Theresa had grown used to Carter's quiet presence, the way he moved through the world with steady confidence but without arrogance. He was not a talkative man, but when he spoke, his words were thoughtful and sincere. "You have done good work here," he said finally. "The house looks better than it has in years. That garden is flourishing. Even the chickens seem happier." Theresa smiled. "I doubt the chickens have opinions about my arrival. You would be surprised. Chickens are opinionated creatures." He paused, then added, "What I am trying to say is that I appreciate having you here. It has made a difference, having someone to share the work and the space." "I am grateful for the opportunity," Theresa said. "You gave me a chance when no one else would." Carter turned to look at her, his expression serious in the fading light. "Can I ask you something? You do not have to answer if you do not want to." Theresa felt her stomach tighten, but she nodded. "You have people somewhere, family or friends who know where you are?" "No," she said quietly. "My parents disowned me when they learned about the baby. I have a sister, but she is married with children of her own, and she made it clear that having me around would be an embarrassment to her family. There is no one." Carter was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentle. "That must be lonely." "It is," Theresa admitted, "but it is better than staying where I was not wanted." "You are wanted here," Carter said, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him sharply. He met her gaze steadily. "I want you to know that. You have a place here for as long as you need it. After the baby comes, if you want to stay, the job is yours. I will help however I can." Theresa felt tears sting her eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because someone should be," he said simply. "Because you deserve kindness just like anyone else. What happened to you, whatever circumstances brought you here, that does not define who you are. I can see that you are a good person, Theresa. That is all that matters to me." It was the first time he had used her given name, and hearing it in his quiet, steady voice broke something loose inside her. She set down her coffee cup and covered her face with her hands, and then she was crying. Not the silent tears she had shed so many times before, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from the very core of her being. Carter did not try to touch her or comfort her with empty words. He simply sat with her while she cried, his presence a solid, reassuring constant in the gathering darkness. When the storm finally passed and she lowered her hands, embarrassed and exhausted, he handed her a handkerchief without comment. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Do not be. You are entitled to your feelings. You must think I am foolish." "I think you are human," Carter said. "And humans cry when they need to. There is no shame in that." They sat together until full darkness fell and the stars blazed overhead in the clear desert sky. Finally, Carter stood and picked up the empty coffee cups. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow is Sunday, no heavy work. You should take the day to relax. What about you? Cattle do not recognize Sundays, but I will keep it light. Maybe you could make those biscuits again. The ones you made last week, of course, Theresa said, smiling despite herself. Good night, then. Good night, Carter. As she watched him go inside, Theresa felt something shift in her heart. She had been so focused on survival, on simply making it through each day, that she had not allowed herself to really see the man who had given her sanctuary. But she saw him now, and what she saw moved her more than she wanted to admit. Summer settled over the Nevada desert with a dry heat that made working outside before 10 in the morning or after 4 in the afternoon nearly impossible. Theresa's pregnancy advanced, and by late July she was 7 months along, her belly round and heavy, her movements slower and more deliberate. Carter adjusted her workload without being asked, taking over the heavier tasks and hiring a boy from town to help with the outside work. He never made a fuss about it, simply took the wash basket from her hands one morning and did the laundry himself, hung a rope line under the porch so she could work in the shade, and started bringing water from the well in the evening so she would not have to make the trips during the day. You do not have to do this, Theresa protested when she found him scrubbing shirts in the washtub one morning. I know, he said, but you should not be hauling heavy buckets of water in your condition. Let me help. You are already doing so much. Carter looked up at her, squinting against the morning sun. Theresa, you are 7 months pregnant and you still cook 3 meals a day, keep the house clean, tend the garden, and care for the chickens. I think I can manage to do some laundry without it being a burden. But I am supposed to be working for you. This is my job. Your job is to help run this household, and you do that admirably. But we are partners in this enterprise, are we not? Partners help each other when needed. Right now you need help, so let me give it. Theresa felt that now familiar flutter in her chest, the one that came every time Carter said or did something that revealed the depth of his decency. She had tried to ignore the growing feelings she had for him, telling herself it was gratitude, nothing more. But it was becoming harder to pretend that what she felt was anything other than love. The realization terrified her. She had no right to love him, not when she was carrying another man's child, not when she was in his employ, not when he had shown her nothing but kindness and respect that she did not want to complicate with unwanted feelings. So she kept her emotions locked tightly inside and went about her work, trying not to notice the way her heart lifted when she heard his step on the porch, or the way she looked forward to their evening conversations, or the way she had started imagining what it would be like to share not just a house but a life with him. In early August, a woman named Martha Riley rode out from town with her teenage daughter Susan. Martha was the wife of the local pastor, a practical woman with a kind heart who had heard about Theresa and wanted to meet her. I hope you do not mind us calling, Martha said as Theresa served them lemonade on the porch. I like to welcome newcomers to the area, and I understand you are expecting a baby soon. In about 2 months, Theresa confirmed, touching her belly self-consciously. Your first? Yes. Martha smiled warmly. How exciting. And a bit frightening too, I imagine. Do you have everything you need? Baby clothes, blankets, diapers. Theresa felt her cheeks heat. I have not really thought that far ahead. Well, we must remedy that, Martha said firmly. Susan and I have been sewing baby clothes. We would be happy to bring them out to you. And there is a women's group at the church that meets every Thursday. We sew and quilt together and we gossip, if I am being honest. You would be welcome to join us if you like. Theresa hesitated. I do not know if that would be appropriate. Why not? Because I am not married, Theresa said quietly. I am sure people have talked. Martha set down her lemonade glass and looked at Theresa directly. People always talk, dear. That is what people do. But the women in my group are not interested in judging you. We are interested in helping you. Every woman who has had a child knows that it takes more than just the mother to raise a baby well. It takes a community. We want to be that for you, if you will let us." Theresa felt tears threatening again, which seemed to be her constant state these days. "That is very kind of you." "It is not kindness, it is common sense," Martha said briskly. "Now, Carter mentioned that you might need a midwife when your time comes. My sister Elizabeth has attended more births than I can count. Shall I ask her to come visit you so you two can get acquainted?" "Yes, please," Theresa said gratefully. "I would appreciate that very much." "Wonderful. Now tell me how you are feeling. Any problems, pain, swelling?" They spent the next hour talking about pregnancy and babies, and all the practical matters that Theresa had been too afraid to ask about. Susan, who was 16 and curious, asked endless questions that Martha answered with patient good humor. By the time they left, Theresa felt more prepared and less alone than she had since discovering her condition. "I like Martha," Carter said that evening when Theresa told him about the visit. "She is good people, her husband too. They practice what they preach. She invited me to join a women's group at the church." "Will you go?" "I think I might," Theresa said slowly. "It would be nice to have friends, other women to talk to." "You should definitely go then," Carter encouraged. "I can drive you into town on Thursdays if you like." "You do not have to do that." "I know I do not have to, I want to." Theresa looked at him across the supper table, at his honest face and steady eyes, and felt her carefully controlled emotions threaten to spill over. "Carter, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you do all this? Why are you so good to me?" Carter was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and serious. "When my parents died, I was 25 years old and suddenly alone in the world. People rallied around me, helped me keep the ranch going, brought food, offered support. I learned then that kindness matters, that helping someone when they need it is not about what you get back. It is about doing what is right. You needed help, Theresa. I was in a position to give it. That is all." "It is not all," Theresa said softly. "What you have given me is more than just a job or a place to stay. You have given me dignity. You have treated me like a person worthy of respect, not like something shameful to be hidden away. You have no idea what that means to me." Carter met her eyes and something passed between them, some unspoken understanding that changed the air in the room. "You are worthy of respect," he said quietly. "You are worthy of much more than that. Carter, I—" Theresa started, then stopped, unsure of what she wanted to say or if she should say it at all. "What is it?" "Nothing," she said, losing her courage. "Just thank you for everything." He nodded slowly, and she thought she saw a disappointment flicker across his face, but it was gone before she could be sure. "You are welcome," he said, and then he stood and carried his dishes to the sink, and the moment passed. But that night, lying in her narrow bed with the baby moving inside her, Theresa let herself admit the truth. She was in love with Carter Zimmerman, hopelessly, completely in love, and she had no idea what to do about it. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the beginning of harvest season. Theresa was 8 months pregnant now, moving slowly and tiring easily, but she refused to stop working entirely. She still cooked, though Carter had taken over most of the other household tasks, and she spent her afternoons on the porch shelling beans or mending clothes while watching the ranch activity around her. She had gone to town with Carter several times now, joining Martha's women's group and meeting Elizabeth, the midwife who would attend her when the baby came. The women had welcomed her without judgment, and she had slowly begun to relax, to believe that perhaps she could make a life here, that perhaps she did not have to carry her shame forever. But her feelings for Carter continued to grow, and they were becoming harder to hide. She caught herself watching him as he worked, admiring the capable way he moved, the quiet confidence he brought to every task. She noticed small things, the way he hummed softly when he thought no one was listening, the way he always made sure she had the comfortable chair, the way he had fixed the squeaky hinge on her door without being asked. He had not said or done anything to suggest he saw her as more than an employee, and she told herself that was for the best. She was pregnant with another man's child, dependent on him for her livelihood. The last thing she should do was burden him with her feelings. But knowing that and controlling her heart were two very different things. One evening in mid-September, Carter came in from the barn looking troubled. Theresa was setting supper on the table and looked up in concern. "What is wrong?" "Nothing serious," he said, washing his hands at the sink. "Just thinking." "About what?" He dried his hands and turned to face her, his expression uncertain. "About you, actually, about your situation." Theresa felt her heart begin to pound. "What about it? When the baby comes, you are going to need help. More help than I can give you and still run the ranch. I have been thinking about what happens after the birth, how you manage with a newborn while trying to work." "I will manage," Theresa said, trying to sound confident. "Women have babies and work all the time." "I know, but you should not have to do everything alone. You should have support, someone to share the burden." He paused, then said in a rush, "I think you should consider getting married." Theresa stared at him, feeling like she had been punched in the stomach. "Married to whom?" "There are men in town who would be willing. Good men who would treat you right and give the baby a name." "I see," Theresa said faintly, sitting down before her legs gave out. He wanted her to marry someone else. The message was clear. "Have you been speaking to someone about this?" "No, I just thought." Carter ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "I am making a mess of this. What I am trying to say is that you deserve a real home, a real family, not just a job and a room in someone else's house. The baby deserves a father, a name that is not shadowed by questions and whispers. And you think I should marry someone I do not know, someone I do not love, just to have those things?" Theresa heard her voice rising but could not stop it. "Is that what you think of me?" "No, that is not what I meant at all," Carter said, looking distressed. "I am saying this all wrong." "Then what are you saying?" Carter was silent for a long moment, and Theresa watched him struggle with something, saw the war playing out on his face. Finally, he said, "Marry me." The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water, sending ripples through everything. Theresa could not breathe, could not think. "What? Marry me," Carter repeated, his voice stronger now. "Not for those practical reasons, though they are real. Not just to give the baby a name or to give you security. Marry me because I want you to. Because I cannot imagine this house without you in it anymore. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being my housekeeper and became the person I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night." Theresa pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Carter, I know this is not romantic," he continued, the words tumbling out now like he had been holding them back for too long. "I know you are pregnant with another man's child, and I am offering you nothing but a hard life on a struggling ranch. But I would be a good husband to you, Theresa. I would be a good father to your baby. I would give you my name and my protection and everything I have. And if you could find it in yourself to care for me even a little bit, that would be enough. I would make it enough." "Care for you," Theresa whispered. "Carter, I love you. I have loved you for months, I thought you could never want someone like me." Carter crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Someone like you, Theresa, you are the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met. You faced down shame and rejection and kept going. You work harder than anyone I know. You made this house a home. You made me remember what it is like to have someone to talk to, someone to share things with. How could I not want you? But the baby. The baby is part of you, which means I will love it, Carter said fiercely. Any child you bring into this world will be mine in every way that matters. I will raise it as my own, give it my name, protect it with my life. That is what family means. Not blood, but choice and commitment and love. Theresa could not speak through her tears. She pulled her hands free and cupped Carter's face, looking into his eyes and seeing nothing but truth there, nothing but love and certainty and hope. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Carter's face transformed, breaking into a smile so wide and genuine that it took her breath away. He stood and pulled her gently to her feet, then wrapped his arms around her as well as he could with her pregnant belly between them. "We will do this right," he said into her hair. "We will get married properly, in the church with Martha's husband officiating. We will make this legal and binding and real. Your baby will be born a Zimmerman. No one will ever question it or make you feel ashamed again. I promise you that." Theresa pulled back enough to look at him. "You really want this? You are not just doing this because you feel sorry for me." "I really want this," Carter said, and then he kissed her, soft and sweet, a kiss full of promise and new beginnings. They were married 10 days later in the small church in Lovelock. Martha and her husband Thomas stood up with them, and the women from the sewing circle filled the pews, bringing flowers from their gardens and rice to throw. Theresa wore a simple blue dress that Martha had altered to fit her pregnancy, and Carter wore his best shirt and cleanest pants. The ceremony was short but meaningful, and when Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, Theresa felt the last of her shame fall away. They were a family now. She was Mrs. Carter Zimmerman, a rancher's wife, a woman with a home and a husband and a future. The whispers and judgment that had followed her from Missouri could not touch her here. She was reborn, given a second chance, and she vowed to herself and to Carter that she would make the most of it. The ranch house felt different when they returned to it that evening. It was no longer Carter's house where Theresa worked. It was their home, the first real home Theresa had known since leaving Missouri. Carter carried her over the threshold despite her protests about her size, making her laugh, and then they stood in the kitchen together, suddenly shy with each other. "I moved my things into the spare room," Carter said. "I thought you would want to keep the bigger room, especially with the baby coming." Theresa looked at him, at this good man who had just married her and given her his name, and felt a surge of love so strong it almost hurt. "Carter, we are married now. We do not have to sleep in separate rooms." "I know, but I did not want to assume. You have been through so much, and you are so far along in your pregnancy. I do not want you to feel pressured to." Theresa stepped forward and put her finger on his lips, silencing him. "I am exactly where I want to be with exactly who I want to be with. I know this is not a conventional situation, but nothing about us has been conventional from the start. We will figure it out together, all right." Carter smiled and kissed her palm. "All right." They spent their wedding night talking, lying side by side in the darkness and sharing the stories of their lives. Carter told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to ride before he could read, about the dreams he had of building something lasting. Theresa told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her love of teaching, about the traveling salesman who had promised her the world and delivered only betrayal and heartbreak. "I thought I loved him," she admitted quietly, "but I realize now that what I felt was not real love. I was lonely and he was charming and I wanted to believe his promises. Real love is what I feel for you, this certainty, this peace, this feeling of being home." "I feel it too," Carter said, holding her close. "I have been alone for so long I had forgotten what it was like to have a partner." You make everything better, Theresa. You make the work lighter and the days brighter. You make me want to build something more than just a successful ranch. You make me want to build a life." "We will build it together," Theresa promised, and sealed it with a kiss. The baby came 3 weeks later, on a cool October evening when the setting sun painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Theresa's labor began in the afternoon, and Carter rode to town immediately to fetch Elizabeth the midwife. Martha came too, and between the two of them they helped Theresa through the long hours of labor. Carter stayed nearby, pacing on the porch and venturing into the bedroom whenever Theresa called for him. He held her hand through the worst of the pains, murmured encouragement, wiped her face with a cool cloth. His presence steadied her, gave her strength to keep going when she thought she could not endure another moment. Finally, just after midnight, the baby arrived with a lusty cry that filled the little ranch house with new life. Elizabeth cleaned the infant and wrapped it in a soft blanket, then placed the baby in Theresa's arms. "A son," she announced with a smile. "A healthy, strong boy." Theresa looked down at her baby, at the tiny face and miniature fingers, and felt her heart expand to hold this enormous love. The baby had dark hair and blue eyes that would probably change, and a rosebud mouth that opened in a yawn. He was perfect, absolutely perfect, and he was hers. Carter stood beside the bed, looking down at the baby with an expression of wonder. "He is beautiful," he said softly. "You did so well, Theresa. I am so proud of you. Would you like to hold him?" Theresa asked. Carter's hands were trembling slightly as he took the baby, cradling him with surprising confidence for someone who had never held an infant before. The baby settled against his chest, and Carter looked at Theresa with tears in his eyes. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "Welcome to your family. I am your father, and I am going to love you for the rest of my life." Theresa felt tears slide down her cheeks as she watched her husband bond with her son. This was what mattered, she thought. Not biology or circumstance, but this moment, this commitment, this love. "We should name him," she said. "What would you like to call him?" Theresa had thought about this during the long months of her pregnancy, about what name would suit the child she was bringing into the world. "Thomas," she said. "After Pastor Thomas, who married us and welcomed us without judgment. Thomas Carter Zimmerman." Carter smiled, still looking at the baby. "That is a good, strong name. Hello, Thomas. Welcome home." Elizabeth and Martha left after ensuring that both mother and baby were healthy and resting comfortably. Carter settled Theresa and Thomas into bed, tucking blankets around them with gentle care. "You should sleep," he said. "You have earned it." "Will you stay?" Theresa asked. "Just for a while." "I am not going anywhere," Carter promised, settling into the chair beside the bed. "I will be right here." Theresa drifted off with her baby in her arms and her husband watching over them both, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt completely safe, completely loved, completely home. The first months with a newborn were both wonderful and exhausting. Thomas was a hungry baby who woke frequently during the night, and Theresa quickly learned to function on minimal sleep. But Carter was there, always ready to help. He would walk the floor with Thomas when the baby was fussy, letting Theresa rest. He would heat water for washing diapers, rock the cradle when Thomas would not settle, and sing off key lullabies that somehow soothed the baby even when nothing else would. "You are a natural father," Theresa told him one evening as she watched him change Thomas's diaper with practiced ease. "I do not know about that," Carter said, fastening the cloth with careful pins. "But I am doing my best. That is all any of us can do." Winter settled over the ranch, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The work slowed during these months, giving Carter more time to spend at the house. He would hold Thomas while Theresa cooked, pointing out things through the window and talking to the baby about the ranch. about the cattle and horses, about the life he would grow up knowing. Theresa would watch them together and marvel at how natural it all felt. There was no difference in how Carter treated Thomas, no sense that the baby was anything other than his son in every way that mattered. When people in town asked about the baby, Carter would smile with genuine pride and say, "Our son is doing wonderfully, thank you." Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly at the ranch. Carter had bought a small tree from a man who hauled them down from the mountains, and Theresa decorated it with ribbons and paper stars. They exchanged modest gifts, practical things they needed, but given with love. Theresa had knitted Carter a warm scarf, and he had bought her a beautiful shawl from the mercantile, soft wool in a deep blue that matched her eyes. "I have one more gift for you," Carter said as they sat by the fire that evening with Thomas sleeping between them in his cradle. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to her. Theresa opened it carefully. It was a legal document, signed and witnessed, formally acknowledging Thomas Carter Zimmerman as Carter's son, with all rights and privileges that entailed. "I know I am his father in every way that matters," Carter said quietly, "but I wanted it to be legal too, so there would never be any question, any challenge to his place in this family. He is my son, and this proves it." Theresa clutched the paper to her chest, overwhelmed. "Carter, this is—" "I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that this is forever. You and Thomas, you are my family now. Nothing is going to change that." Theresa leaned over and kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and love into it. "I love you so much," she whispered against his lips. "Thank you for being you. Thank you for choosing us." "Choosing you was the easiest decision I ever made," Carter said, and pulled her close. Spring arrived with wildflowers blooming across the desert and new calves being born in the pastures. Thomas was 6 months old now, a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone and had just started to sit up on his own. Theresa had settled into her role as ranch wife and mother, finding a rhythm that worked for their family. The women from town continued to visit regularly, bringing food and baby clothes and friendship. Martha had become a dear friend, someone Theresa could confide in and rely on. Through Martha, Theresa had slowly built a network of connections in the community, becoming not just accepted but genuinely welcomed. One warm April afternoon, Theresa was working in the garden while Thomas played on a blanket nearby when she heard the sound of approaching horses. She looked up to see 3 men riding toward the ranch house. Something about their manner made her uneasy, and she quickly picked up Thomas and moved toward the house. Carter emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants, and walked to meet the riders. Theresa stood on the porch, holding Thomas close, and watched as Carter spoke with the men. She could not hear what was being said, but she could see Carter's body language shift, become more tense and protective. After a few minutes, the men rode away, and Carter came up to the porch. His face was troubled. "What did they want?" Theresa asked. "They were asking questions about you," Carter said. "About when you arrived in Lovelock, about the baby. One of them claimed to be investigating something, but he would not say what." Theresa felt ice form in her stomach. "Do you think? Could it be him? The baby's father? I do not know. Did you ever tell him where you were going when you left Missouri?" "No, I bought the ticket on impulse. I never wrote to anyone. How could he have found me?" Carter put his arm around her shoulders. "Maybe he did not. Maybe this is about something else entirely. But until we know for sure, we need to be careful." 2 days later, a man arrived at the ranch alone. He was well-dressed, with expensive boots and a city manner that was out of place in the rural setting. Carter met him in the yard, and Theresa watched from the kitchen window, her heart pounding. "Are you Carter Zimmerman?" the man asked. "I am. What can I do for you?" "My name is Theresa Grant. I am looking for my daughter, Theresa Grant. I have reason to believe she may be in this area." Theresa gasped and nearly dropped the dish she was holding. Her father, the man who had disowned her, who had turned his back on her when she needed him most, was standing in her front yard. Carter glanced toward the house, and even from a distance, Theresa could see the question in his eyes. She shook her head slightly. She did not want to see him, did not want to speak to him. "I am sorry, Mr. Grant," Carter said, turning back to the visitor, "but I do not know anyone by that name. I was told in town that you have a wife and a young baby. When did you marry?" "I fail to see how that is any of your business," Carter said, his voice cold. "But if you must know, my wife and I were married last September. Our son was born in October. Now, if you do not mind, I have work to do. May I speak with your wife?" "No, you may not. She is busy with the baby." "Good day, Mr. Grant." Frederick Grant looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Carter's stance must have convinced him it would be futile. He mounted his horse and rode away, though not before casting a long look back at the house. Carter waited until he was out of sight, then came inside. Theresa was sitting at the table, shaking Thomas in her arms. "That was my father," she said unnecessarily. "I gathered. What do you want to do?" "Nothing. I want nothing to do with him. He made his choice when he disowned me. He does not get to come back into my life now." "Are you sure? He might have had a change of heart." Theresa shook her head firmly. "If he had a change of heart, he would have helped me when I needed it, not shown up months later after I have already built a new life." "No, Carter." "He is not welcome here." Carter nodded. "Then he is not welcome. If he comes back, I will send him away again. You are Mrs. Zimmerman now, not Theresa Grant. That life is over." But Frederick Grant did not give up easily. He took a room at the boarding house in town and began asking questions, trying to piece together Theresa's story. He spoke to Mrs. Fletcher, to the shopkeepers, to anyone who might know something about the young, pregnant woman who had arrived alone last spring. Martha came out to the ranch to warn them. "Your father is making quite a nuisance of himself," she told Theresa. "He is trying to find out if Carter's baby is really his, suggesting that you were pregnant when you married. Some people are starting to talk." "Let them talk," Theresa said, though her hands were clenched into fists. "They cannot change the facts. Thomas is Carter's son legally and in every other way that matters. I know that, and most people in town know that too, but your father seems determined to cause trouble. He is saying that Carter tricked you into marriage, that you are not of sound mind, all sorts of nonsense." Carter had been listening silently, his face growing darker. "What does he want?" "I think he wants to take Theresa back to Missouri," Martha said. "He keeps talking about his daughter being led astray, about rescuing her from a bad situation." "Over my dead body," Carter said flatly. "Carter, do not," Theresa said, putting a hand on his arm. "Do not let him provoke you into doing something that will make things worse. He cannot take you away. You are my wife. I know, and I am not going anywhere, but we have to be smart about this. If he tries to make legal trouble, we need to be prepared." They consulted with a lawyer in town, a man named Harrison who specialized in property and family law. He reviewed their marriage certificate and the adoption papers for Thomas. "Everything is in order," Harrison assured them. "Mrs. Zimmerman is legally your wife, Mr. Zimmerman. Thomas is legally your son. Her father has no claim over her. She is an adult woman who made her own choices." "But he is going around town spreading lies about us," Theresa said. "That is unfortunate, but not illegal. The best thing you can do is ignore him. Eventually, he will run out of money or patience and leave. Do not give him ammunition by engaging with him or reacting to his provocations." They followed Harrison's advice, going about their business and refusing to be drawn into confrontation. But it was hard, especially when they went to town for supplies and encountered Frederick Grant on the street. "Theresa," he called, striding toward them. "Please, I just want to talk to you." Carter stepped between them. "The lady has nothing to say to you. She is my daughter. I have a right to speak to her. She is my wife, and she has made it clear she does not wish to speak with you. Respect that." Frederick's face reddened. "You took advantage of her when she was vulnerable. You married her for money or land or God knows what reason, but it was not love. I know what you are, Zimmerman. I investigated you. You are a nobody with a struggling ranch and no prospects. You saw an opportunity and you took it. You do not know anything about me or about what I feel for Theresa," Carter said, his voice low and dangerous. "And you certainly do not know your daughter if you think she is the kind of woman who could be taken advantage of. She is the strongest person I have ever met, and she made her own choices. Now get out of our way." They moved past him, but Theresa's hands were shaking as she held Thomas. "He is not going to stop," she said quietly. "Yes, he will. Eventually, we just have to outlast him." But that evening, back at the ranch, Theresa made a decision. "I need to talk to him," she told Carter. "I need to face him and tell him directly to leave us alone." "Are you sure?" "Yes. This is not fair to you or to Thomas. I will not let him disrupt our lives any longer." The next day, Theresa went to the boarding house with Carter at her side. Mrs. Fletcher showed them to Frederick's room, and Theresa knocked firmly on the door. Her father opened it, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Frederick had aged since she had last seen him, new lines around his eyes and gray in his hair. He looked tired and, despite everything, genuinely relieved to see her. "Theresa," he said, "thank God, please come in." "We will talk in the parlor," Theresa said coolly. "What I have to say will not take long." They went downstairs to the boarding house parlor, a plain room with uncomfortable furniture and lace curtains. Carter stood by the door while Theresa faced her father. "You wanted to talk, so talk," she said. "But know that nothing you say will change my mind about anything." Frederick looked at Carter, then back at Theresa. "Can we speak privately?" "No, Carter is my husband. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of him." Frederick sighed and sat down heavily. "I came to apologize," he said, "for what I said when you told me about the baby, for turning my back on you when you needed help. Your mother and we reacted badly. We were scared and angry and we lashed out, but we never stopped loving you, Theresa. We never stopped being your parents." Theresa felt a lump form in her throat, but she kept her voice steady. "You disowned me. You told me never to come back. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I was pregnant and alone and terrified, and the people who should have supported me threw me out like garbage. I know, and I am sorry. Truly sorry. That is why I came looking for you, to make amends, to bring you home." "I am home," Theresa said firmly. "This is my home. Carter is my family. Thomas is my son. The life you think you are rescuing me from is the life I chose, the life I want. But living out here, married to a man you barely knew, raising a child in these conditions, this is not what you were meant for. You were a teacher, educated and refined. You could have so much more." "I have everything I want," Theresa said. "I have a husband who loves me, who treats me with respect and kindness. I have a beautiful son. I have friends and a community and a purpose. What more could I possibly need? But what about the scandal? What about your reputation? What about it? I do not care what people in Missouri think of me. I do not care about reputation or scandal or any of the things that seemed so important before. I care about the people I love and who love me back. That is all that matters." Frederick looked at Carter. "And you? What are you getting out of this arrangement?" "Everything," Carter said simply. "I am getting a wife I love more than my own life, a son I am proud to call mine, and a family I will spend every day trying to deserve. Theresa did not need rescuing, Mr. Grant. She rescued herself, and then she honored me by choosing to build a life with me. That is the truth, whether you want to believe it or not." Frederick was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with resignation. "I can see that you have made up your mind. I cannot force you to come home." "No, you cannot," Theresa agreed. "But I want to make something clear. If you ever want to be part of my life again, if you ever want to know your grandson, you need to accept my choices. Accept my marriage, accept my family, accept that I am happy. Can you do that?" Frederick looked at Thomas, who was sleeping peacefully in Theresa's arms. Something softened in his face. "He looks like you did as a baby," he said quietly. "Same nose." "Will you accept us?" Theresa pressed. "All of us as we are." Frederick stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dusty street. After what felt like an eternity, he turned back. "I do not understand it," he said. "I do not understand how you can be happy in this place with this life, but I can see that you are. And I am tired of being angry, tired of being righteous. If this is what you want, then I accept it. I accept your husband, your son, your choices. I just want my daughter back." Theresa felt tears sting her eyes. "Then you need to meet your grandson properly. This is Thomas Carter Zimmerman. And this is my husband, Carter." Carter stepped forward and extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Frederick shook it. "I will not pretend this is easy for me," Frederick said, "but I will try. For Theresa's sake, for my grandson's sake, I will try." It was not a perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Frederick stayed in Lovelock for another week, and during that time he visited the ranch several times. He was stiff and formal at first, clearly uncomfortable with the rustic setting, but he softened when he held Thomas, and he watched Carter and Theresa together with something that might have been understanding. "You really do love her," he said to Carter one evening when the men were alone on the porch. "More than anything," Carter confirmed. "And the boy? You truly think of him as your son." "He is my son," Carter said firmly. "In every way that matters. I will raise him, teach him, protect him, and love him for the rest of my life. His biology does not change that." Frederick nodded slowly. "You are a better man than I gave you credit for, Zimmerman. Take care of them." "I will. You have my word." Before he left, Frederick gave Theresa a letter from her mother and some money that she initially refused. "It is not charity," he insisted. "It is yours. Money your grandmother left you that I have been holding. You are entitled to it." Theresa finally accepted, and after Frederick rode away, she stood with Carter and watched the dust settle on the empty road. "You think he meant it?" she asked. "About accepting us?" "I think he is trying to. That is all we can ask. It does not change anything, does it? Even if he had not come around, we would still be a family." Carter pulled her close. "Nothing could change that. We are bound together now, the three of us. That bond is stronger than blood or convention or other people's opinions. We are a family because we choose to be, every single day." Theresa rested her head on his shoulder and watched Thomas playing in the yard, chasing a butterfly with unsteady steps. "I love our life," she said. "Every hard, dusty, beautiful part of it." "So do I," Carter said and kissed the top of her head. Summer came again, bringing the anniversary of Theresa's arrival in Lovelock. She had been in Nevada for more than a year now, and in that time, her entire life had transformed. She was no longer the frightened, ashamed woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpetbag and a burden of scandal. She was a wife, a mother, a rancher, a respected member of the community. She had found herself here in the desert, had discovered a strength and resilience she had not known she possessed. The ranch was thriving too. Carter's hard work was paying off, and they had doubled their cattle herd. They had painted the house, expanded the garden, built a new chicken coop. Thomas was growing like a weed, walking now and babbling constantly in his own language. He followed Carter everywhere, his little shadow, already learning to love the land and the animals. In August, Theresa discovered she was pregnant again. She told Carter on a warm evening after they had put Thomas to bed, and his face lit up with joy. "Really, we are having another baby." "Yes, due sometime in early March, I think." Carter pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "This is wonderful. Thomas will have a brother or sister. We are growing our family." "Are you happy?" Theresa asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "I am beyond happy. I am blessed. 2 years ago I was alone, working this ranch with no real purpose beyond survival. Now I have a wife I adore, a son who makes me laugh every day, and another baby on the way. How could I be anything but happy?" The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and by Christmas, Theresa was 5 months along and beginning to show. They celebrated the holiday with more people this time, inviting Martha and Thomas Riley, Elizabeth the midwife, and several other friends from town. The house was full of laughter and warmth, and Thomas charmed everyone with his enthusiasm for the decorated tree and the presents. Late that night, after everyone had gone and Thomas was asleep, Carter and Theresa sat by the fire together. "This time last year, we had been married just a few months," Theresa said. "Do you remember how uncertain everything felt?" "I remember being afraid you would change your mind," Carter admitted, "that you would wake up one day and realize you had settled for less than you deserved." "Less? Carter, I have more than I ever dreamed of. You gave me everything when I had nothing. You gave me dignity when the world wanted me to feel shame. You gave me your name, your home, your heart. How could that ever be less?" "You gave me just as much," Carter said. "You brought life and light into this house. You made me believe in family again, in the possibility of building something lasting. You trusted me with your heart and your child, and I do not take that lightly." Theresa kissed him, slow and sweet. "I love you, Carter Zimmerman. I will love you for the rest of my life." "And I will love you for the rest of mine," he promised. The new baby arrived in early March of 1880, right on schedule. The labor was shorter this time, and Elizabeth said Theresa handled it like a seasoned pro. This time, it was a girl, and she arrived with a head full of dark hair and lungs that announced her presence to the world. They named her Grace Martha Zimmerman, after the grace that had brought them together and the friend who had welcomed Theresa when others might have judged. Thomas, who was 18 months old, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her and kiss her and show her all his toys. "Gentle," Carter would remind him, guiding Thomas's small hands to touch Grace's soft hair carefully. "She is very little. We have to be careful with her." "Baby," Thomas would say solemnly, then lean down to kiss Grace's forehead with exaggerated care that made both parents smile. That spring, Theresa received a letter from her mother. It was long and emotional, full of apologies and explanations, expressing regret for how they had treated her and hope that they could rebuild their relationship. Theresa cried as she read it, and she wrote back immediately, telling her mother about her life, about Carter and Thomas and baby Grace, about the ranch and the friends she had made. A correspondence began between them, tentative at first but growing warmer with each exchange of letters. Her mother included photographs, and Theresa sent some back, showing her children to her parents. It was not the same as having them close, but it was something, a bridge across the distance that had separated them. In May, on the anniversary of her arrival in Lovelock, Carter gave Theresa a gift. It was a small painting, done by an artist in town, showing the ranch house with the desert stretching behind it and the mountains in the distance. At the bottom, the artist had painted the words "home." "I wanted you to have something that captured this place," Carter said. "So you could always remember where we started, what we built together." Theresa held the painting carefully, tears blurring her vision. "It is perfect. Thank you." That evening they stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Thomas played in the yard, chasing chickens and laughing while Grace slept peacefully in Theresa's arms. 2 years, Theresa said quietly. 2 years since I arrived here with nothing. You did not have nothing, Carter corrected gently. You had courage. You had strength. You had hope that things could be better, even when everything seemed hopeless. That is not nothing. I had shame too, so much shame I could barely breathe under the weight of it. And now, Theresa looked at her husband, at her children, at the home they had built together. Now I have pride. Pride in what we have created, in the family we are. You gave me more than your name, Carter. You gave me the chance to become the person I was always meant to be. Carter kissed her temple. We gave that to each other. That is what love does. It sees the best in us and helps us become it. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch continued to prosper, allowing them to make improvements and hire occasional help. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved working alongside his father and learning everything about ranching. Grace was quieter but just as determined, with a stubborn streak that reminded Carter of her mother. In 1882, they had another son, James Frederick Zimmerman, named for Carter's father and Theresa's, a gesture of reconciliation and hope. Thomas was thrilled to have a brother, and he took his role as big brother seriously, teaching James everything he knew as soon as the baby was old enough to pay attention. Theresa's parents visited when James was 6 months old, their first trip to Nevada. It was awkward at first, years of hurt and misunderstanding hanging in the air, but the children helped bridge the gap. Frederick Grant held his grandchildren and saw how happy his daughter was, and whatever remaining reservations he had melted away. "You have a beautiful family," he told Theresa on the last day of their visit. "And you were right. This is where you belong. I am sorry it took me so long to see that." "I am just glad you finally do," Theresa said, hugging him. After they left, promising to return the following year, Carter and Theresa talked long into the night about family and forgiveness, and the unexpected ways life could work out. "I never imagined I would be here," Theresa said. "Married to a rancher in Nevada, with 3 children and a life I love. When I was on that stagecoach 2 years ago, I thought my life was over." "It was just beginning," Carter said. "The old life was over, yes, but this new one, the real one, was just starting. Do you ever regret it? Taking me in, marrying me, raising Thomas as your own? Do you ever wish things had been different?" Carter looked at her in genuine surprise. "Regret it? Theresa, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and the children, you are everything. I would not change a single moment of our story, not even the hard parts. They brought us here to this life, to this family. How could I regret that? I love you so much," Theresa said, and the words felt inadequate for the depth of what she felt. "I love you too. Always." The children continued to grow. Thomas became a skilled horseman and a hard worker, already showing signs of the man he would become. Grace was smart and curious, always asking questions and wanting to know how things worked. James was the comedian of the family, always making them laugh with his antics and funny faces. In 1885, when Thomas was 7, Grace 5, and James 3, Theresa gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Samuel and Sarah. The house was suddenly very full and very loud, and Carter joked that they were running a school rather than a ranch. But he loved every chaotic moment of it, loved coming home to the noise and activity, loved being surrounded by his growing family. Theresa sometimes looked around at her life and marveled at the journey that had brought her here. She taught the children their letters and numbers, read to them from the books she had saved from her teaching days, and told them stories about the world beyond their ranch. She worked in her garden, cooked meals for her large family, helped with the ranch work when needed, and felt more fulfilled than she ever had as a schoolteacher. The shame that had once defined her was a distant memory now, something she sometimes thought about but no longer felt. She was Mrs. Carter Zimmerman, respected and valued in the community, a mother and wife and friend. Her past no longer had the power to hurt her because her present was so full of love and purpose. On their 10th wedding anniversary in September of 1889, Carter surprised her with a trip to Virginia City. They left the children with Martha and Thomas, who had 5 grown children of their own and were happy to help, and spent 2 days alone together for the first time in years. They walked the streets of the mining town, had dinner in a fancy restaurant, and stayed in a hotel with a real bathtub and soft beds. It was lovely and romantic, and they talked about everything and nothing, enjoying the rare privacy. 10 years, Theresa said as they sat in the hotel restaurant on their last evening. I cannot believe it has been 10 years. Best 10 years of my life, Carter said, raising his glass to her. Mine too. When I think about that scared girl who arrived in Lovelock with nothing but a carpetbag and shame, I barely recognize her. She is still you, just stronger, braver, more sure of herself. Because of you. Because you saw something in me worth believing in when I could not see it myself. I saw what was always there, Carter said. I just helped you see it too. They returned to the ranch to find the children full of stories about their adventures with the Rileys and excited to see their parents. The house felt even more like home after being away, and Theresa was happy to return to the routine and rhythm of their lives. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays, and the endless cycle of ranch work. The children grew older, each developing their own personalities and interests. Thomas showed real talent for ranching and talked about expanding the operation someday. Grace loved books and learning, already talking about becoming a teacher like her mother had been. James was mechanical, always taking things apart to see how they worked. Samuel and Sarah, as twins often do, had their own private language and world. In 1895, Frederick Grant passed away peacefully in his sleep. Theresa traveled to Missouri for the funeral, taking Grace and James with her. It was her first time back since leaving 17 years earlier, and she was struck by how small everything seemed, how constrained the life she had led there had been. At the funeral, she saw people who had shunned her all those years ago, who had whispered about her and treated her like a scandal. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others approached with awkward apologies. Theresa accepted them with grace, but felt no need to revisit the past. She had moved beyond it long ago. Her mother came back to Nevada with them, deciding she wanted to spend her remaining years near her daughter and grandchildren. Carter built her a small cottage on the ranch property, close enough to be part of the family but with her own space and privacy. She integrated into their lives seamlessly, becoming an invaluable help with the children and the household and a dear companion to Theresa. I missed so much, she said to Theresa one evening as they sat together sewing. So many years we could have had together. We have now, Theresa said. That is what matters. We cannot change the past, but we can make the most of the present. You are wise, daughter, wiser than I ever was. I learned from experience, from mistakes and pain and working through them. That is the only way wisdom comes, I think. In 1898, Thomas married a local girl named Rebecca, and they moved into a new house Carter helped them build on the northern section of the ranch. It was strange at first, having her oldest child grown and starting his own family, but Theresa was proud of the man he had become and happy to see him settled. Grace finished school and did indeed become a teacher, taking a position in Lovelock and living with a respectable family in town during the week. She came home on weekends, and the house always felt more complete when she was there. The younger children were still at home, Samuel preparing to go to agricultural college in California, Sarah talking about nursing school. The house that had once held 5 children now only had 2 full-time, and Theresa felt the bittersweet ache of watching her family grow and change. "They are supposed to grow up and leave," Carter reminded her when she expressed her feelings. "That is what we raised them to do, to be capable, independent adults who can make their own way in the world. I know, it just happens so fast. It does, but we still have each other. We started this journey together, just the two of us, and we will finish it the same way. And along the way, we will have grandchildren to spoil and children who come back to visit. Our life is not ending, it is just changing." He was right, as usual. In 1900, Thomas and Rebecca had their first child, a boy they named Carter Thomas Zimmerman, after his grandfather. Theresa held her first grandchild and felt the circle of life complete itself in the most beautiful way. "This is what it is all about," she said to Carter as they sat together watching Thomas play with his son. "Building something that lasts beyond us, creating a family that will go on. We did good," Carter said, putting his arm around her. "Look at what we built from nothing. A ranch, a family, a legacy. Not bad for a cowboy and a woman who arrived with nothing but shame." Theresa laughed. "You gave me so much more than your last name, Carter Zimmerman. You gave me a life worth living. You gave me the same. We gave it to each other." As the new century dawned, Carter and Theresa looked back on their lives with satisfaction and forward to the future with hope. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. They had raised children who were making their own marks on the world. They had built a ranch that would support generations to come. But more than any of that, they had loved each other with a fierce, constant devotion that had sustained them through everything. They had proven that family was not just about blood, but about choice and commitment. They had shown that shame could be overcome, that dignity could be restored, that second chances were real. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Thomas was there with Rebecca and their 3 children. Grace brought her new husband Daniel, a fellow teacher she had married the year before. James came with his fiancée. Samuel arrived from California, where he was working as an agricultural specialist. Sarah brought her nursing school roommate. Theresa's mother, now in her 80s but still sharp and active, presided over the festivities with pride. Martha and Thomas Riley came, as they always had, faithful friends through all the years. As Theresa looked around at the gathering, at all the people who had come from that one desperate decision she had made 31 years ago to step off a stagecoach in Lovelock, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Carter found her standing alone for a moment, watching the party, and came to her side. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About that girl who arrived here with nothing but shame, about how scared she was, how certain that her life was over, about how wrong she was." "She was not wrong about having nothing," Carter said. "She just did not realize that sometimes having nothing is exactly where you need to be to receive everything." Theresa turned to face her husband, this man who had given her everything when she had nothing to offer in return. His hair was gray now, his face weathered by years in the sun, but his eyes were still the same clear blue, still looking at her with the same love and steadiness they had held 30 years ago. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for valuing me when I felt worthless. Thank you for giving me your name and your dignity and your heart." "Thank you for accepting them," Carter said. "Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for being my partner and my love and my best friend." Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to take a chance on a struggling rancher with more hope than sense." They kissed there in front of their family and friends, and everyone cheered and applauded. It was a kiss that held 30 years of love and commitment, of challenges overcome and joys shared, of a life built together from nothing. As the sun set over the desert that evening, painting the sky in brilliant reds and golds, 3 generations of Zimmermans gathered on the porch of the ranch house. The children played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm air. The adults talked and reminisced, sharing stories and making memories. Carter and Theresa sat together in the rocking chairs, holding hands and watching it all. They had started with nothing but hope and determination and love. They had faced judgment and hardship and uncertainty. But they had persevered, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful and lasting. "You have any regrets?" Theresa asked, a question she had not asked in years. "Not a single one," Carter said without hesitation. "Every moment, good and bad, led us here. How could I regret any of it?" "I love you, Carter Zimmerman." "I love you too, Theresa Zimmerman. Forever." As darkness fell and the stars came out, the family gradually dispersed to their various accommodations, and the ranch grew quiet. Carter and Theresa remained on the porch, reluctant to end the perfect day. 30 years, Theresa mused. Where did they go? Into this, Carter said, gesturing to encompass the ranch, the family, the life they had built. Into everything that matters. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes only from decades of companionship, until the night grew cool and they finally went inside. The house was quiet now, but full of the presence of family, past and present and future. In their bedroom, preparing for sleep, they moved around each other with the practiced ease of long marriage. Carter helped Theresa with the buttons she could not reach. She laid out his clothes for the next day, knowing he would be up before dawn as he always was. "Thank you," she said as they climbed into bed. "For what? For today? For 30 years? For everything?" "The pleasure has been entirely mine," Carter said, pulling her close. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the way they had slept for 30 years, and their dreams were peaceful. The years that followed were golden ones. Carter and Theresa aged gracefully, their love deepening with each passing season. They watched their children have children of their own, filling the ranch with new life and energy. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, attended weddings and christenings, mourned losses and celebrated triumphs. Theresa's mother passed away peacefully in 1912, surrounded by family, having spent her final years immersed in the love and warmth she had once nearly thrown away. Theresa grieved but was comforted knowing they had reconciled and had those precious years together. Carter's health remained strong through his 60s, though he finally agreed to hire a full-time foreman when he turned 70. Thomas had taken over most of the day-to-day operations of the ranch anyway, allowing Carter to step back and enjoy a slower pace. He and Theresa spent their days working in the garden, playing with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the desert they both loved. They traveled occasionally, visiting their children in California and taking a trip to San Francisco to see the ocean. But they always came back to the ranch, to the home they had built together, to the place where their story had begun. In the spring of 1920, they celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them, cooked by Theresa's own hands despite her children's protests that she should let them do the work. "I have been cooking for this man for 41 years, she said. "I think I can manage one more anniversary dinner." The meal was simple but delicious, and they ate by candlelight at the table where they had shared thousands of meals over the decades. 41 years, Carter said, shaking his head in wonder. How did we get so old? Carefully, Theresa said with a smile. One day at a time. Best 41 years imaginable. You ever think about that day we met, when I was standing outside the post office looking so lost, all the time, Carter admitted. I think about how close I came to just walking past you. I almost did, you know. I almost minded my own business and kept going. Something made me stop, made me speak to you. Fate, Theresa said. It was fate. We were meant to find each other. I believe that. I believe some force in the universe looked at a struggling rancher and a desperate woman and decided they should be together. And I am grateful every day that it did. They moved to the porch after dinner, as they always did, and sat in their rocking chairs watching the stars emerge. The desert night was cool and clear, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. I want you to know something, Theresa said into the comfortable silence. If I had to do it all over again, if I could go back to that day I arrived in Lovelock, I would do everything exactly the same. Every choice, every moment, all of it, because it brought me here to you, to this life, and that makes everything I went through worth it. Carter reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining automatically. I feel the same. You saved me, Theresa. I did not even realize I needed saving, but I did. I was existing, not living. You taught me the difference. You taught me what love really means, what family really means. You made me better than I ever could have been alone. We made each other better, Theresa corrected. That is what love does. They sat until late into the night, talking and reminiscing and simply being together. Finally, they went inside, helping each other navigate the familiar rooms in the darkness, and went to bed in the house that had sheltered their love for more than 4 decades. Carter passed away peacefully in his sleep in the fall of 1922, just shy of his 75th birthday. Theresa woke to find him beside her, looking peaceful and content, and though her heart broke, she was grateful he had gone easily, without pain or suffering. The funeral was one of the largest Lovelock had ever seen. 3 generations of Zimmermans gathered, along with friends and neighbors and people whose lives Carter had touched over the years. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone marker that read, Carter James Zimmerman, beloved husband, father, and friend. Theresa stood at the grave surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she thought about the life they had built together. 43 years of marriage, 50 head of cattle grown to 500. A small ranch house expanded into a thriving operation that supported 3 families. 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren so far. A legacy of love and hard work and dignity. He gave me everything, she said to Thomas, who stood beside her with his arm around her shoulders. Your father gave me everything when I had nothing. You gave him everything too, Mama, Thomas said gently. Do not forget that. You made him happy, you made all of us happy. That is a gift. Theresa lived for 7 more years, surrounded by her family and the community she had become an integral part of. She taught her grandchildren to read, told them stories about their grandfather, and made sure they understood the values he had lived by. Hard work, kindness, integrity, and love. She remained sharp and active until the end, tending her garden and cooking Sunday dinners for whoever could make it to the ranch. She watched her family continue to grow and thrive, saw Thomas's children have children of their own, celebrated Grace's success as a principal of the school where she had taught for so many years. In the spring of 1929, Theresa fell ill with pneumonia. Despite the best efforts of doctors and family, she grew weaker. On a warm May evening, 51 years to the day after she had arrived in Lovelock with nothing but shame and a carpetbag, she passed away peacefully surrounded by her children. They buried her next to Carter on the hill overlooking the ranch, with a marker that read, Theresa Marie Zimmerman, beloved wife, mother, and friend. But Grace suggested they add one more line, and the family agreed. Below her name and dates, they carved. She arrived with nothing but shame. He gave her dignity and his last name. Together they built a legacy of love. The ranch continued through the generations, passed down from Thomas to his children and grandchildren. The original house was preserved as a family shrine, kept exactly as Carter and Theresa had left it, a reminder of where it all began. And on warm evenings when the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant colors, family members would sometimes sit on that old porch in those same rocking chairs and tell the story of Carter and Theresa. They would talk about the cowboy who saw past shame to the woman beneath, who offered not just employment but dignity and hope. They would talk about the woman who arrived with nothing and built everything through courage and love and determination. It was a love story, pure and simple. Not perfect, not easy, but real and deep and lasting. A story that proved that second chances were real, that shame could be overcome, that love could heal and transform and create something beautiful from nothing. And every time the story was told, the love that Carter and Theresa had shared seemed to fill the air, warm and comforting and eternal, a reminder that some things really do last forever.